tonight's story. I'm your storyteller, ready to help you let go of your worries and fall into a deep sleep. If you're new here, like this video and subscribe. Let the gentle rain and breeze lull you into comfort and rest. I had always been a city, fast-paced, high stress, always on the move. But that summer in 1983, I decided it was time for a change. After years of sitting behind a desk, drowning in paperwork for a failing advertising firm, I figured I needed a break. Fresh air, quiet, and a long overdue break from the relentless noise of Toronto. So, I packed up my old RV and drove north toward Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia. When I finally arrived, I found the peace I'd been craving. Well, a kind of peace. The kind you only get when you're deep in the wilderness, surrounded by towering trees and thick, unfamiliar fog. It felt like a different world. The kind of place where the world seemed to slow down, where you could breathe without the constant hum of the city in your ears. But it didn't take long before I began to feel like something was watching me. The campsite I had chosen was isolated, just on the edge of a dense forest, which looked picturesque enough in the daylight. The air smelled of fresh pine and the earth beneath my feet felt solid. I set up my camp with ease, relieved to get some rest from the long drive. After all, it wasn't every day I could escape my responsibilities. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows between the trees, I felt the first pang of unease. The campsite was quiet, too quiet. There were no birds chirping, no rustling in the leaves, nothing. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just the unfamiliar. Still, a knot of tension settled in my stomach. And as I sat beside the small fire, I'd managed to start, thankfully. Not with sticks, I couldn't help but glance at the trees beyond the clearing. Something didn't feel right. I dismissed the thought, telling myself I was just imagining things, letting the isolation get to me. But as I stared into the flames, I could have sworn I saw something movement, just at the edge of the forest. It was too quick for me to make out, but my heart jumped. I was being paranoid. After all, this was just a camping trip, right? I had always made fun of people who got spooked by the woods. So, I poured myself a drink and tried to focus on the fire. The last thing I needed was to turn into some nervous wreck. But then, the wind picked up. It wasn't a gentle breeze. No, it was an eerie, howling gust that seemed to come from all directions at once. It rattled the branches of the trees, and the flames flickered wildly, casting strange, shifting shadows across the campsite. I froze. Something wasn't right. Something felt off. Suddenly, the silence of the forest was shattered by a low growl. It was deep and guttural, unlike anything I had ever heard before. It echoed through the trees, sending a wave of fear crashing over me. I jumped to my feet, my pulse racing. That was no animal. I grabbed my flashlight and swung it around, heart hammering in my chest. There was nothing. The forest was still, too still. My head was spinning. It was just the wind, I told myself. Just the wind. But in the distance, I saw it again, a shape moving quickly between the trees, low to the ground, too fast, too large to be anything I knew. The growl came again, this time louder, closer. My breath caught in my throat. I backed up slowly, towards the RV. I didn't care how stupid I looked, I was done with this. I didn't come all the way out here to get eaten by some thing. I hurried inside the RV and locked the door behind me, heart pounding in my ears. I stumbled to the front window and peered out into the darkness, but I saw nothing. The forest was silent again. Too silent. I reached for my rifle, which I kept in the cabinet just in case, but my hands shook so badly, I couldn't get a good grip on it. I had to force myself to calm down, to think straight. But there was a growing sense of dread creeping up my spine. What was that sound? Was I just hearing things? I had to be. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. The night dragged on in silence, but the tension never left. I sat in the RV, rifle in hand, my eyes glued to the window, waiting. The wind had died down, but the feeling of unease remained. I kept thinking back to that growl, that shape I'd seen flitting between the trees. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like I was being watched. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a bear or a large animal. The forest was full of wildlife, after all. But somehow, deep down, I knew it wasn't. Bears don't move like that, fast and low to the ground, like something hunting prey. I told myself I had overreacted. The woods could play tricks on the mind, especially at night, when the sounds of the forest are warped by the darkness. But as the hours passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond the trees, waiting for the right moment to strike. Eventually, I fell into a fitful sleep, the light from the small lantern casting long shadows across the RV. My dreams were a tangled mess, flashes of movement in the trees, growls echoing through the forest, and a pair of glowing eyes watching me from the dark. I woke up with a start, drenched in sweat, the sound of something tapping against the RV's walls jolting me from my nightmare. My heart skipped a beat, my breath shallow and quick. I froze. Tap, tap, tap. It was light, barely noticeable, but unmistakable. I glanced around, trying to orient myself. It was still pitch dark outside. The only sounds were my own breathing and the distant rustling of leaves in the wind. I grabbed the flashlight and flicked it on, pointing it at the windows, but saw nothing. The RV was still. Nothing. I let out a slow breath, trying to calm myself, but the sense of dread didn't ease. I had to get out of here. I needed to get back to town. 2 people. I grabbed my jacket and rifle and quietly opened the RV door, stepping outside with the gun at my side. The night air was cool, the scent of pine and damp earth mixing together. The moon was high, barely visible through the dense trees, casting an eerie glow on the forest floor. For a long moment, I just stood there, listening. The tapping had stopped, but the forest still felt unnervingly silent. No crickets, no rustling of leaves, just that oppressive quiet. I scanned the trees, my heart pounding. The growl from earlier flashed through my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was closing in on me. I had to leave, now. I made my way to the truck, each step slow and deliberate, my senses on high alert. I kept glancing behind me, feeling like I was being followed. But when I turned around, there was nothing, just the shadow of the forest, silent and still. I reached the truck and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. I was almost inside when I heard it, a low growl. It wasn't far, coming from the trees, just beyond the clearing. I froze, the blood draining from my face. The growl was deeper this time, a vibration that rattled my chest. I spun around, rifle in hand, aiming it into the darkness. The growl came again, closer now, but still nothing moved in the trees. It was like it was everywhere and nowhere at once, surrounding me in the dead of night. I could feel my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I was no longer alone. I heard a snap, a twig breaking beneath something's weight. It was quick, but loud enough to send a bolt of fear through me. I whirled around again, flashlight sweeping the forest, but it didn't help. The beam flickered as the trees seemed to stretch farther into the blackness. It was impossible to see through the dense thicket of branches. The growl came again, closer, almost right behind me. I spun, raising the rifle instinctively. But before I could react, a shadow darted across the corner of my vision. Something large moved between the trees. I wasn't alone. I didn't wait to confirm what it was. Panic surged through me, and I bolted toward the truck. I heard a low hiss behind me, followed by the unmistakable sound of claws scraping across bark. Something was hunting me. I scrambled into the truck, slamming the door shut and fumbling with the keys. My hands were trembling so badly that I could barely turn the ignition, but I finally managed to start the engine. The headlights flashed on, cutting through the dark, and I slammed my foot on the gas. As the truck sped down the narrow road, I glanced into the rearview mirror. Nothing. The forest was still, silent, but the fear gnawing at me wouldn't go away. I drove faster, my heart still racing, the growl from earlier echoing in my mind. My thoughts were a blur. Had I imagined it all? Or was something truly out there? The tapping, the growls, the shadow in the trees. It wasn't over. I could feel it. Whatever was out there, it was still watching. I couldn't stop driving, even though every part of me screamed to pull over, take a break, and regain some composure. But the road ahead was empty, with only the dim glow of the headlights cutting through the fog. And the night was closing in on me like a suffocating blanket. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white as I tried to push the thoughts of what had just happened from my mind. The growls, the movement, the shadow I had seen darting across the tree's eye couldn't shake the feeling that something was stalking me. I glanced nervously at the rearview mirror every few seconds, but there was nothing. Just the thick fog swirling behind me. I tried to convince myself. It was just my nerves getting the better of me. The isolation of the woods, the unfamiliar surroundings, it was enough to make anyone paranoid. But deep down, I knew it was something more. I had felt it, like the forest itself was breathing, watching, waiting. I drove for what felt like hours, my eyes growing heavy from the fatigue, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't rest. I needed to get out of Blackwood, to leave whatever had been lurking in the woods behind me. Then, the truck hit a bump, and I slammed my foot on the brake. The engine sputtered, and the lights flickered. I cursed under my breath and pulled over to the side of the road. Not now, I thought desperately. Not now. I turned off the engine and sat in the darkness, trying to calm my racing heart. The silence outside was oppressive. No wind, no animals, just the eerie hum of the truck's engine cooling down. The fog had thickened again, pressing in on the truck like an invisible hand. I grabbed my flashlight and opened the door, stepping out into the cold night air. My breath came out in visible puffs, and I shivered involuntarily. As I walked to the front of the truck, I could hear nothing but the occasional rustling of leaves and the sound of my own boots crunching against the gravel road. The trees stretched up on either side, their branches swaying in the wind. I popped the hood, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. It didn't take long for me to notice the issue. Something had lodged in the engine. I bent down to inspect it when I heard it again, a snap, like a twig breaking in the distance. I froze. It wasn't the wind. The trees were far enough away that no breeze could have made that sound. This was something else. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. I glanced around, scanning the shadows, but the forest was still. The fog swirled, thick and dense, cutting off my vision beyond a few feet. Another snap, closer this time. I grabbed the flashlight and swung it around, but there was nothing there. The beam cut through the mist, illuminating nothing but the dark shadows of the trees. I swallowed, forcing myself to breathe deeply. Get a grip, Warren, but I couldn't. Something was out there, watching, waiting. I felt it again, the sensation that I was being followed, that I was no longer alone. It was like the woods themselves had become aware of me, aware that I didn't belong. The growl came again, louder this time, closer. I turned sharply, flashlight in hand, but I still saw nothing. My stomach churned with dread. The growl was unmistakably a deep guttural sound that vibrated through the ground beneath me. And then I saw it, a shadow. It moved fast, slipping between the trees like a phantom, so quick I couldn't catch it with my eyes. But I felt it, the presence of something big, something predatory. I backed away from the truck, trying to stay calm. My hands were shaking, and my mind raced with fear. The growl came again, this time just to the left of me, low and deep, like it was right behind me. I spun, my flashlight casting frantic beams across the forest, but I still saw nothing. The growl echoed again, this time louder, closer. I could hear its breath. I turned and ran back to the truck, slamming the door shut behind me. My breath was ragged as I fumbled with the keys, trying to start the engine, but my hands were shaking too badly. I twisted the key again, and the engine sputtered to life with a cough. Please, just start. I slammed the truck into gear and pulled away, the tires screeching against the gravel. The creature's growl echoed behind me as I sped down the road, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. The fear was choking me, and my heart pounded in my chest like a drumbeat. But as I drove, something felt wrong. The road ahead was still the same narrow winding, and lined with trees on either side. But there was something else. The trees. They were moving. Slowly at first, but then it became clear they were bending, leaning in toward the road. The fog had thickened even more, and I could barely see more than a few feet ahead. I slammed on the brakes. The road had changed. I wasn't on the same path anymore. It was as if the forest had shifted, turning me in a different direction without my knowledge. The trees on both sides were closing in, their trunks too thick, too close together. It was like I was trapped in a tunnel of wood and fog, with nowhere to go. The creature's growl rumbled again, but now it was more than just a sound. It was a presence, something pushing in on me, tightening its grip. The growl became a snarl, and I knew without a doubt that it was coming. It was closing in on me, and there was nowhere to run. I floored the pedal, but the truck barely moved. The wheels spun uselessly on the gravel road. I looked ahead again, and that's when I saw it, the figure. At the edge of the road, just beyond the fog, stood a silhouette, a tall, dark figure, standing perfectly still, its eyes glowing in the mist. It was watching me. I slammed my foot on the gas, but the truck wouldn't move. The figure stepped forward, its presence suffocating. It was blocking my way, like it was waiting for me. I was trapped. I couldn't move. The figure stood at the edge of the road, its tall, shadowy form cutting through the thick fog like an immovable wall. I felt the weight of its presence, heavy and suffocating, like it was holding the forest itself still. I had no choice but to stare, my heart hammering in my chest, my hands frozen on the wheel. The fog around me was thick, swirling in unnatural patterns. The trees felt like they were alive, shifting and bending toward the figure, almost as if they were bowing to it. I had no idea who or what it was, but I could feel its power, its control over this place. This wasn't just a figure in the woods. It was the forest's will, its ruler, its guardian. I didn't know what to do. The growl of the creature was distant now, but its presence was still very much there, lingering in the air like a storm waiting to break. The figure didn't move, but I felt its eyes on me, cold and calculating. It knew I was there. It knew everything. The fog pressed against the windshield, thick and unrelenting, and I felt the truck's engine sputter. The gas pedal was like lead beneath my foot, no power, no control. The forest was suffocating it, suffocating me. Then, the figure spoke. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't even a voice, it was more like a thought planted in my head. Warren Whitman. I shuddered. The sound of my name being spoken by something not of this world, making my blood run cold. The way it resonated in my mind felt like an invitation, like it was beckoning me, drawing me toward it, pulling me toward something I couldn't even begin to comprehend. You have trespassed into our domain. The voice echoed again, but this time it wasn't just in my mind, it was in the air itself, vibrating through the fog, through the trees. The forest has been disturbed, and you, like all who come, will be claimed. I opened my mouth to speak, to scream, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. My tongue felt heavy, my mouth dry as dust. I couldn't breathe properly, the air so thick, so tainted with the power of the forest. The figure took a step forward, its long limbs stretching out from the fog, and the moment it moved, The trees shuddered, as though they were in its service. "You have awakened us," the voice reverberated, pulling at my very being. "Now, you will be ours. Forever." I slammed my foot onto the gas pedal, but the truck stayed rooted to the spot. It was like the forest itself had planted roots beneath it, like I was no longer in control of the vehicle or my own body. The creature's growl grew louder again, but now it wasn't just a sound, it was a feeling, like the growl was vibrating through the air, filling my chest, my bones. I could hear the trees creaking, bending, swaying to a rhythm I couldn't understand. The forest was alive, and it had been waiting for me, waiting for the moment when it could claim me, just like it had claimed everyone else who had wandered too deep into its grasp. The figure reached the edge of the truck, standing directly in front of the windshield. I couldn't see its face. Its features were hidden in the shifting shadows of the fog, but I could feel it. It was watching me. It was waiting for me to make my next move. And I realized, with a sickening certainty, that it wasn't going to let me leave. I could hear my own breath coming out in quick, shallow gasps, my hands trembling on the wheel. There was no way out. The forest had marked me. It owned me now. Suddenly, the truck lurched forward, as if something had pushed it from behind. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw nothing, just the dark, swirling fog behind me. The truck moved forward, but it wasn't under my control. It was as though the road itself was directing me, guiding me toward the forest's heart. I tried to fight it, tried to take control of the wheel, but the more I fought, the harder it became. The trees closed in around me, their gnarled branches reaching down like claws, scraping across the sides of the truck, dragging the vehicle deeper into the forest. And then I saw it, the clearing. A massive, twisted tree stood at the center of the clearing, its bark dark and mottled, veins of glowing blue, light pulsating beneath the surface. The roots of the tree stretched out like a net, covering the ground, and the moment I saw it, I knew. This was it, the heart of the forest. The truck came to a halt before the tree, the engine sputtering and dying as I finally lost control. I opened the door, stepping out onto the soft, damp earth. I could feel the pulse of the forest beneath my feet, vibrating through the ground. The air was thick with power. It pressed down on me like a weight. The creature's growl came again, and this time, I didn't look away. I didn't have to. The creature was here. I could see its shape moving through the mist, its glowing eyes locked onto me. And then, I heard it, the whisper. Rick's voice. "Warren." I turned, but there was nothing. The fog swallowed everything, leaving only the pulsating blue light from the tree, casting long, eerie shadows across the clearing. "Warren, fight it." I couldn't move. I was trapped in the heart of the forest, surrounded by its power. But Rick's voice, it was the only thing left that felt real. I stood frozen, staring at the ancient tree before me. Its twisted trunk seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky, the veins of blue light pulsing in eerie rhythm with my heartbeat. Every inch of me screamed to turn and run, but my body refused to obey. It was as if the forest had already claimed me, roots wrapping around my legs, pulling me closer to the center of this nightmare. The growls of the creature echoed from behind me, but I couldn't turn to face it. Something else had my attention now. The tree, the heart of the forest, it was alive. It wasn't just the forest that watched me. The tree itself seemed to breathe, its roots writhing in the earth like serpents, its branches stretching out toward me like hands, beckoning me to come closer. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't respond. The creature's growl was closer now, deep and rumbling. The air felt thick with its presence, like it was pressing against me from every side. I couldn't breathe, and then Rick's voice came again, faint but unmistakable. "Warren, don't let it take you." My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure where the voice was coming from, but I felt it deep inside me, like Rick's spirit was still here, still fighting for me. I reached for him, but the pull of the tree was too strong. I had to fight it. But how? The creature's growl came again, louder this time, and the ground beneath me trembled. I looked to my left and saw the creature's silhouette emerging from the mist. Its glowing eyes locked onto me with a hunger that made my stomach churn. Its claws scraped across the earth, and it moved closer, its body flickering in and out of the fog. I realized, with a sickening certainty, that I wasn't just being hunted by the creature. I was being guided to the tree. The forest wasn't just trapping meat, was preparing me for something. The Watcher's voice whispered in my ear, cutting through the fog like a blade. The forest calls for you. You are its chosen. The offering must be made. The words didn't make sense, but they didn't need to. The truth was there, buried beneath the terror. The forest had chosen me, and I was no longer just an intruder. I was its sacrifice. The creature stopped just a few feet away from me, its eyes glowing with an almost knowing intelligence. The whispers from the trees grew louder, their voices overlapping, drowning out everything else. I could hear the forest calling to me, the ground beneath my feet pulling me down, urging me to kneel before the ancient tree. The blue veins of the tree pulsed brighter, and I felt the pressure building in my chest, like the weight of the forest was pushing me closer to the ground. I was fighting it, struggling to move, but the tree's pull was stronger. The creature stepped forward, its massive form looming over me. I looked up, my eyes meeting its glowing ones, and for a moment, I could see something in its eyes understanding. It wasn't just a beast. It wasn't hunting me for food. It was guiding me to this moment. The Watcher's voice grew louder, its command more urgent. You are the offering. The forest requires you to complete the cycle. The blood must be spilled. I shook my head, desperation flooding my chest. No, this can't be happening. But I knew the truth. The forest wasn't just an entity. It was an ancient being, and I had awakened it when I stepped into its heart. The creature, the Watcher, they were part of it, but I was the one who had disturbed its peace, and now I was going to pay the price. I tried to run, but the ground beneath me shifted, the roots of the tree reaching out like claws, wrapping around my legs. The air turned cold, suffocating, and I could barely breathe. I screamed, trying to free myself, but the more I struggled, the more the roots pulled me toward the tree. I could feel it. The forest was pulling me into its core, into its dark heart. The creature growled again, louder, more menacing, and this time, it moved closer, its massive claws reaching out toward me. I closed my eyes, expecting the worst, but then a voice. Warren, fight it. You have the power to break free. It was Rick. His voice was weak, distant, but it cut through the fog, through the weight of the forest. I didn't know how, but in that moment, I felt something inside me stir. The fear, the dread, the suffocating weight of the forest. It was all too much. But I had one choice. I had to fight. With everything I had, I threw myself backward, ripping my legs free from the roots that had me bound. The growl of the creature came again, but this time, I didn't wait. I turned, pushing through the fog and stumbling back toward the clearing, back toward the truck. The creature roared, its claws slashing through the air, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. The trees groaned and twisted as I ran, their roots and branches reaching for me, trying to stop me, but I was already too far gone. The forest had claimed me, but I wasn't going to give in. Not yet. I saw the truck again, its headlights flashing through the mist, the road ahead still there. I could escape, but as I reached for the door, I heard it, the roar. The forest's last command. You cannot escape. The offering must be made. The creature was right behind me, its claws swiping at the air, but I didn't stop. I opened the door, jumped into the driver's seat, and slammed the pedal to the metal. The truck lurched forward, the tires spinning on the gravel road as I fought to drive away. I could hear the creature behind me, but I didn't look back. The forest was still closing in. I was driving as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. But I knew one thing. The forest hadn't let me go. Not yet. The engine roared as I sped down the road, the fog swirling violently around me. But no matter how fast I drove, I could still feel the pulled weight of the forest's presence in the air. My hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel, my pulse pounding in my throat. The creature's growls were fading behind me, but something in the back of my mind kept whispering that it wasn't over, that it would never be over. I pushed the truck faster, the tires screeching on the gravel, as I tried to outrun the nightmare that had claimed me. The Watcher had spoken, the creature had pursued me, but the forest was the true force, here ancient, unyielding, and hungry. But as the truck barreled down the winding road, something strange started to happen. The trees, once distant and towering, began to close in. The fog thickened again, wrapping itself around me like a living entity. I glanced out the window, trying to see past the thick mist. But all I could see were the trees, their twisted forms like skeletal hands reaching toward me. It felt like the forest was shrinking, closing in from all sides, the road narrowing, making it impossible to see what lay ahead. The truck shuddered under me, and the engine sputtered, as if it were struggling to keep up with the increasing weight of the forest's power. I slammed my foot down harder on the gas, but the truck's movements felt sluggish, like the road itself was fighting against me. I looked in the rearview mirror. The creature was still there. It wasn't just chasing me anymore. It was following me, staying just out of sight in the mist, but its presence was undeniable. Its growls were low, deep, and relentless, like it was growing more frustrated with each passing second. The forest was feeding it, empowering it, and that wasn't all. The trees on both sides of the road began to move. Not in the way trees should move, but with an unnatural, jerking motion. It was like the entire forest had come alive, shifting to trap me, guiding me deeper into its heart. The road itself was becoming a labyrinth, twisting and turning in ways that made no sense, as though the forest was rewriting its own geography. I had to get out. I had to escape. But no matter how fast I pushed the truck, it felt like the forest was pulling me in, dragging me deeper into its tangled web. The trees were closing in, their roots reaching toward the truck, brushing against the sides. The fog thickened again, blinding me, and the truck slowed even more. Suddenly, the road in front of me gave way. The tires slid on something slick, and I slammed on the brakes, heart in my throat as the truck slid toward the edge of a cliff. I managed to stop just in time, the truck shuddering to a halt at the very edge of the drop. My breath was ragged, my chest tight, and I could feel the weight of the forest pressing on me, suffocating me. I looked ahead, my eyes straining to see past the fog, and that's when I saw it. The clearing. In the distance, I could see the faint light of the moon cutting through the mist, illuminating a clearing ahead of space in the forest where the trees seemed to thin out. It was a stark contrast to the dense wilderness that surrounded me. I felt the pull again, like the forest itself was guiding me toward it. The road was no longer an option. There was only one way forward. I took a deep breath, wiped the sweat from my brow, and forced the truck into gear again. It moved slowly, struggling against the pull of the forest, but I pushed on. Every instinct told me to turn around, to go back, but I knew I couldn't. The forest had already claimed me. I was being drawn in. As the truck made its way toward the clearing, the fog cleared for a moment, revealing the full scope of what lay ahead. The massive tree at the center of the clearing loomed large, its twisted bark gnarled and dark, glowing veins of light pulsating through its trunk. It looked like the heart of the forest, the source of its power, its life. And it was waiting. I didn't know how, but I knew, deep down, that the tree was the source of all of this. The creature, the Watcher, the forest, it was all part of the same force, the same ancient being. And now, I was part of it. I had no choice. I had to go to it. As I reached the edge of the clearing, the truck finally came to a halt. The fog seemed to lift, just enough for me to see the full scope of the clearing and the tree. The creature's growl came from behind me, but it was quieter now, almost distant, like it had stopped chasing me. It was the tree, now, that commanded everything, and it was commanding me. I opened the door and stepped out of the truck, my heart thundering in my chest. My legs felt weak beneath me as I walked toward the tree, drawn to it by something I couldn't understand, couldn't resist. As I approached, the trees seemed to pulse with life. The blue veins of light beneath the bark shimmered like a heartbeat, each pulse making the air around me thicker, the power of the forest pressing in. And then I heard it, the whispering. The trees, the roots, the air itself, everything was speaking to me. It was everywhere. The voice wasn't one voice, but many, overlapping, swirling around me. The forest was alive, and it had always been alive, and I was part of it now. You are the offering. The words rang out in my head, clearer than anything I had ever heard. I knew what it meant. I knew what I had to do. But in that moment, I felt something stir deep inside me. The voice of Rick again. It was faint, but it was there. Don't let it take you. And just for a moment, the fog seemed to clear, the weight of the forest lifting just enough to let me breathe. But I knew one thing. There was no turning back. I stood at the edge of the clearing, the ancient tree looming before me like some monstrous god. Its dark, twisted bark was etched with veins of blue light that pulsed with each beat, sending a shiver down my spine. The air around it felt alive, thick with energy, pressing in on me. The whispers grew louder, echoing in my head like 1,000 voices all speaking at once, urging me forward. The forest had drawn me here, but I hadn't come willingly. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and run. The creature's growl still echoed in the distance, but it no longer mattered. I felt the pull of the tree, the pull of something older, something ancient that had been here long before I ever set foot in Blackwood. The wind shifted, a low hiss rolling through the trees, and I couldn't help but glance back toward the path I had taken. The fog was thickening again, closing in on the truck, blocking my only potential way out. The trees, they were moving, like they were shifting to prevent my escape. I was trapped. I took a step forward, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The whispers seemed to surround me, drawing me closer to the tree, to the heart of the forest. You are the one. The voice came again, not from the trees, not from the air, but from the tree itself. I couldn't see its mouth, couldn't see any eyes, but I could feel its presence, its intent. It wasn't a voice of malice, not exactly. It was a voice of command. It was a voice that knew me, that knew what I was here for. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to push back the wave of fear that was choking me. I thought of Rick. I thought of the fear in his eyes, of the way he had tried to warn me, tried to get me out before it was too late. And then I realized he didn't escape either. He was part of this. The forest had claimed him. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. The forest took everyone who entered. It consumed them, fed off them, and made them a part of its twisted being. And now, I was standing at the precipice of that same fate. I had disturbed something far greater than any creature. I had disturbed the forest itself. Warren Whitman. My name echoed in the air, sharp and cold, like the sound of metal scraping against stone. I turned to look at the tree again, and this time, the blue veins glowed even brighter, as though the tree itself was breathing, waiting for me to make my final decision. Fight. The voice came again, but it wasn't the tree. It was Rick's voice, distant but unmistakable. I stumbled back, my breath shallow. Could I still fight it? Could I still break free? Or was it already too late? I felt a pull again, but this time, it wasn't just the tree. The ground beneath my feet seemed to be pulling me in, like the roots of the forest were rising to grab me, to drag me into its depths. "You have been chosen," the tree's voice reverberated, its power suffocating, commanding. "The offering must be made. The cycle must be complete." I couldn't breathe. The pressure around me was so thick, I felt like I was drowning. The creature's growl came again, and this time, I could feel its hot breath on my skin, its presence looming just outside the clearing. But I didn't need to look. I could feel that it was part of this, part of the tree, part of the forest. My vision blurred, my heart racing, as the realization fully settled in. There was no escape. The forest wasn't just trapping me, it was pulling me in. I reached for the truck door, my hand shaking violently as I grabbed the handle. The truck was still there, parked just on the edge of the clearing, but I couldn't get to it. The trees around me were closing in. The fog had thickened to the point where I couldn't see anything beyond the clearing anymore. The forest had swallowed me whole. And then, from somewhere within the trees, I heard it. A low, mournful howl. I didn't know what it was, but I knew, without a doubt, it was the creature. It was close, and it was waiting, but not for me to run. It was waiting for me to submit, to accept my fate. The roots beneath me began to writhe, moving faster, pulling me down toward the earth. The trees were bending, the air growing colder, heavier. I had no choice. There was nowhere to run, and then I realized I wasn't meant to escape. The creature's growl came again, louder now, and it wasn't just the growl of a beast. It was a call to the forest itself. The ground beneath me shook, and the sky above darkened, as if the very heavens were being swallowed by the forest. And then, I saw the shadows. They moved faster now, slithering from between the trees, stretching out toward me. Figures, humans or what was left of them, trapped souls. Rick was among them. "Warren, come to us." Rick's voice was clear, almost like he was standing right next to me. I turned, but the figure that stepped from the shadows wasn't Rick anymore. It was something else, something twisted, its features barely recognizable. And then, I felt the roots pulling me again, pulling me down. The forest had already claimed me. It was too late. There was no escape. I was part of it now. The moment the roots wrapped around my ankles, the weight of inevitability crushed me. My body, still shaking from the terror that had gripped me, refused to move. The forest had already made its choice. I wasn't just trapped physically anymore. The forest was in my mind, in my soul. It had always been here, watching, waiting for someone like me to come. The creature's growl echoed once more, but I no longer needed to hear it. The trees, the forest itself were alive in a way I couldn't understand. A consciousness that had been here long before I had ever set foot on these cursed grounds. It had been watching, waiting for the right moment to claim me, to pull me into its ever-expanding depths. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to clear my mind, but it didn't help. The roots were everywhere, crawling beneath the surface of the earth, curling up around my legs, my chest, and now, my throat. I could feel their pull, like the fingers of some unseen hand, dragging me down into the very heart of the forest. And then, I saw it, the heart of the forest. The massive tree at the center of the clearing seemed to pulse with life, its veins of blue light glowing brighter, almost painfully so, as if it was drawing from me, feeding on my fear. The growls of the creature were faint now, swallowed by the thrum of the tree, but the power it emitted was overwhelming, suffocating, pressing down on me like a tidal wave. It wanted me. I felt the pull deeper, now stronger, like my body was no longer my own. I wasn't sure if I was still standing or if I was sinking into the earth. The forest was taking me. It was consuming me, and I couldn't escape. "Come to us, Warren." I heard the voice again, Rick's voice, but it wasn't him anymore. The figure I had seen in the shadows earlier, the twisted version of him, stepped out from between the trees. His eyes were wide, vacant, and hollow, but they glowed faintly in the blue light of the tree. It was no longer Rick. He was part of this place, part of the forest. The forest is your home now. I tried to scream, to fight, but I couldn't. The roots that bound me seemed to pulse with the tree's power, and I could feel something inside me, something dark responding to it. The tree, the forest, the creature, it was all the same, feeding off the souls of those who dared to enter. I had walked into its trap willingly, not knowing that this was what awaited me. But Rick's voice, the last remnant of the person I had once known, called to me, still faintly, from the fog. Don't give in. You can fight it. And then I remembered. Rick had tried to fight. He hadn't given in. He had tried to warn me, to keep me from making the same mistake. But I was too late. The forest had already marked me. And now, there was no escape. The tree's powers surged again, pulling me closer, suffocating me. I was sinking into it. I could feel it in my veins, in my very bones. The forest had taken root inside me. It was like a poison spreading through my body, and the more I fought, the more it consumed. This is where you belong. The words came again, a voice that was not Rick's, but the forest's. A collective voice, a hive mind of every soul it had ever claimed. I felt it in the very air, the very ground beneath me. I felt it in the tree. I was part of it now, and yet there was still something inside me, something human, that refused to give in completely. I wasn't ready to die here, not like this. I reached down, grasping at the roots that had wound around my legs, around my chest. The pull was almost unbearable, but I gritted my teeth and ripped one of them away. The pain, sharp but fleeting. With every ounce of strength I had left, I tore at the roots, prying them from my body. The ground trembled beneath me. No? The voice of the Watcher was like a thunderclap, powerful, final. The earth beneath me cracked, and the roots tightened around my body, pulling me deeper into the ground. The tree's pulse intensified, vibrating through my bones, shaking the very air around me. But I didn't stop. With all the strength I could muster, I pushed against the earth, against the pull of the roots. I ripped them from my body, feeling the earth itself fight against me, but I refused to stay. I refused to be swallowed whole. I could hear the forest crying out, the voices growing louder, the growls of the creature mixing with the whispers of the trees. The Watcher's presence loomed like a shadow, suffocating, but I fought it. I had to escape. I felt something give way beneath me, a part of the ground loosening, and in one final burst of strength, I ripped myself free. I stumbled back, gasping for air, but as I turned to run, I heard the sound of something breaking. The earth cracked open beneath my feet. I wasn't free. I could feel the earth beneath me crack, the very ground shaking, as if the forest was alive and responding to my resistance. The roots I had ripped from my body didn't just disappear. They burrowed back into the earth, twisting and writhing like snakes. It was as if the forest was alive, breathing, watching, always waiting. I didn't stop. I stumbled backward, fighting against the pull of the roots and the ground, trying to move away from the tree, but the darkness closed in faster. The whispers in the trees had turned into a low, monotonous hum, almost like a chant, calling to me. The air thickened around me, oppressive, suffocating, as though the very atmosphere was becoming part of the trap. The creature's growl rumbled once again from behind me, deep and relentless. Its breath was hot against the back of my neck, but I didn't dare turn around. I couldn't. The creature wasn't the worst part of this anymore. The true horror lay in the forest itself. The roots underfoot seemed to rise with every step I took. They wrapped around my legs again, tighter this time, and with a sickening snap, I felt them tug me downward. The forest was claiming me, pulling me into the very heart of its being. I could feel it, deep in my chest. It wasn't just consuming me, it was becoming me. I gasped, fighting for breath. The air was thick with power. The the forest vibrating with an energy so ancient, so strong. I could almost hear its heartbeat in the ground beneath me. The trees, the roots, the very soil beneath my feet, they were alive, moving to the rhythm of something older than time itself. No, no, I whispered, trying to tear myself free. But the roots didn't just hold me, they seemed to feed off my fear, growing stronger as I struggled. My legs burned, my chest ached, and every part of me screamed to get away, but I couldn't. Then, as if the forest was mocking me, I felt a shift in the air. The creature's growl was no longer a distant echo. It was right there, at my side. The fog seemed to swirl tighter, more compact, until I could see the creature's glowing eyes through the mist, locking onto me with a predatory hunger. It had been waiting. I tried to pull away, tried to reach for my rifle, but my arms felt heavy, like they were weighted down by the forest itself. I could barely move, my vision blurred by the thick fog and the overpowering presence of the forest. The growl from the creature deepened, and for the first time, I saw it clearly. It wasn't just a beast. It was a shadow, a part of this land, like it had been born from the trees, from the very roots that were pulling me in. It wasn't simply chasing me. It was heralding the forest's claim. The Watcher's voice, deep and cold, echoed once again, surrounding me in every direction. The cycle must be completed. The offering must be made. And then, I felt it. The roots beneath me shifted, the ground beneath my feet opening up. The clearing the heart of the forest was closing in. I was being consumed by it, swallowed by the ground, by the trees, by the very essence of this place. The growl of the creature mixed with the hum of the trees, and I could feel my body being pulled into the earth, deeper into its darkness. I tried to scream, to shout, but the forest was absorbing everything, drowning out my voice, my thoughts. The creature loomed over me, its glowing eyes reflecting in the fog, watching, waiting. It wasn't just here to kill me. It was here to turn me into part of it, to make me one with the forest. And then, the roots reached up and pulled me under. I felt the earth beneath me shift, its roots pulling me deeper, suffocating, dragging me toward an unknown fate. The last breath of fresh air I managed to inhale, before I was swallowed up by the forest, tasted bitter and cold. The creature's growl, deep and primal, still echoed in my ears, but it was faint, drowned by the overwhelming pulse of the forest's power, the heartbeat of the earth itself. I was sinking, not just into the ground, but into the forest's very core, into its essence. I could feel the tree, the one at the center of it, all vibrating beneath my feet, alive with energy, and it fed off my fear. The more I struggled, the tighter the roots pulled me in. It was as if the forest was feeding off me, turning me into part of it. I closed my eyes, my head spinning, my body drained of all energy. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I was frozen in place, my hands pressed into the dirt, feeling the ancient earth around me shifting and writhing, like it was alive. The ground beneath me cracked again, and for a brief moment, I thought I was being torn apart by the forest. But then, I felt it, the presence, the Watcher. The voice came again, this time much closer, deeper, resonating within my chest. The forest has claimed you. There is no escape. Its voice wasn't like before. It wasn't just a whisper in my mind. It was a command, an undeniable truth. And the more I resisted, the more the forest fought back, tightening its grip around me. The creatures that lived within it weren't chasing me. They were feeding off my fear, my soul. But then, through the suffocating darkness, a small flicker of something human fought its way to the surface. Rick's voice, weak, distant, but still there, cut through the fog. Don't give up. Don't let it win. You're stronger than this. I could feel his presence, like an ember of defiance in the sea of darkness. His voice was the only thing that mattered now, the only piece of reality in this twisted nightmare. I wanted to believe it, to fight with everything I had left. I had to fight back. But how? How could I fight an ancient force like this? How could I fight something that had lived for centuries, feeding off the souls of those it claimed? The forest was the creature, the watcher, and the creature was just one of its many forms, part of the ever-waiting hunger. Suddenly, the ground beneath me trembled again, and the pull of the forest seemed to grow stronger. The roots were no longer just binding me, they were digging into my flesh, consuming me. I screamed, but no sound escaped my throat. My chest burned, and the air felt thick, like I was suffocating beneath the weight of something ancient and powerful. The offering must be made, the watcher's voice again. But this time, something inside me snapped. I was not an offering. I wasn't meant to be consumed like this. I fought with everything I had left. Every part of me screamed for freedom. I focused on the feeling in my chest, the pulse of Rick's voice, the last thread of humanity left in me. I wasn't going to die here. I wasn't going to become part of this. I pushed against the earth with all my strength, feeling the roots that had wrapped around my limbs begin to loosen, if only for a moment. I had to keep fighting. With one last surge of strength, I ripped free from the roots. The earth shuddered beneath me, and for a moment, I thought I was falling into a bottomless pit. But I didn't stop. I ran. My legs felt like lead, my body heavier than ever. But I had one goal: to escape. The trees were closing in around me, their twisted limbs reaching down to grab me. But I dodged them, weaving through the thick fog. The clearing was ahead, the truck hand. I wasn't going to stop until I reached it. The creature's growl came again, louder than ever, but this time, it wasn't enough to stop me. I reached the truck, my body aching, my chest tight with exhaustion, but the doors were locked. I slammed my fist against the door, the metal cold beneath my skin. I looked around, everything was closing in, the trees, the shadows, the fog, and then I saw it, a figure. It wasn't the creature. It wasn't the watcher. It was Rickor, what was left of him. He stood at the edge of the clearing, his eyes hollow, his face gaunt, but he was still there, still human. Warren. His voice was faint, filled with sorrow, but still full of meaning. You can't leave. You're already part of it. I wanted to shout, to scream that I wouldn't give in, that I couldn't become like him, but the words didn't come. The Watcher's voice filled my mind, a final command. Come to us, Warren. You are ours, forever. And then I felt it, the pull. It wasn't just from the tree anymore. It was from everything. The forest, the creature, the Watcher, they were all pulling me back. It was too late. The forest had won. I couldn't move. Every part of me screamed to get away, to run, to fight against the pull of the forest, but my body refused to obey. The earth beneath me felt like it was shifting again, sinking me deeper into the ground, into the dark heart of Blackwood. The creature's growl was close now, its low rumble vibrating through my bones. But it wasn't just the growl that terrified me. It was the way the forest itself seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The trees were no longer just trees. They were watching, waiting, and the roots beneath my feet were tightening, wrapping around me with a strength I couldn't fight. The more I resisted, the more they pulled, like they were determined to drag me into the earth. I could still hear Rick's voice, faint, distant, but so clear. You're part of it now. You can't run away from it. His words hit me like a punch to the gut, and the truth settled in. I wasn't just being hunted anymore. I wasn't just an intruder on this land. I had become part of it. The forest had already begun to consume me. The creature, the Watcher, the trees, they were all part of the same thing, and there was no way to fight it. The glow of the tree in the clearing seemed to call to me, its blue veins pulsing as though it were alive, waiting for me to accept my fate. The offering. I was the offering. It was always meant to be me. I had walked into the forest willingly, and now the cycle had come full circle. I was the sacrifice. I felt a weight in my chest, an oppressive pressure that kept growing with each breath. It was like the forest was pushing me down, suffocating me, wrapping itself around me like a shroud. The roots crept higher, pulling at my legs, my arms, and I could feel them sinking deeper into my skin, into my soul. "Warren, you can fight it." Rick's voice so faint, so full of hope cut through the fog of despair. Was this really Rick? Or was it just another trick the forest was playing on me? Fight. The word echoed in my mind, more urgent than ever before. The last remnants of my humanity clung to the hope that somehow, some way, I could break free of this nightmare. The creature's growl grew louder, the heavy sound vibrating through the very ground beneath me. I turned, and for the first time, I saw it clearly, not just in the shadows, but in the light. The creature wasn't a beast anymore. It wasn't just an animal. It was a shadow, a horror woven from the very essence of Blackwood Forest. Its form was constantly shifting, moving like a mass of tendrils and shadows. Its glowing yellow eyes locked onto me. It wasn't just hunting me. It was controlling me, guiding me toward the center of the forest. The Watcher's voice, so cold and final, spoke again. "You are not meant to leave. The forest has claimed you. The offering is complete." I felt it. The last of my strength, the last remnants of my will to survive, shattering under the weight of the forest's power. It had already consumed Rick. It had consumed the others before me. And now, it was going to consume me. I reached for the tree in the clearing, reaching for the source of it, all the thing that had drawn me here. Its blue veins pulsed, and I felt a surge of energy run through my fingers, my arms, my body. It wasn't just the tree's power I was feeling, it was the forest's power coursing through me, claiming me as its own. I wasn't just a victim. I was one with it. The forest had won. I could hear the distant cries of the souls that had come before me, their voices echoing in the trees. They were part of the forest now, bound by its will. And so, too, would I be. But even as I accepted it, I felt something shift. Rick's voice. "Warren, you still have a choice. You can fight it," I gasped. The voice was clearer now, as though Rick was close, as though he was fighting back from the depths of the forest. The tree's pulsing light flared again, and I felt the grip of the roots tightening. But this time, there was something else, something inside me, something human, that refused to give in. I could feel it. The last flicker of my spirit, of my free will, burning bright in the darkness. I was being consumed, yes, but I wasn't done, not yet. With a final cry, I wrenched myself free from the roots, forcing my legs to move, my body to act. I was weak, my movements sluggish, but I fought against the force that was trying to drag me back. I wasn't going to die here. The creature's growl rumbled louder, and the ground beneath me shook as the forest fought back, but I ran. The trees were moving again, closing in, their twisted limbs reaching for me, but I kept running. The truck to light was ahead. It had to be. I couldn't be the forest's sacrifice. Not yet. With every step, the fog seemed to shift around me, the road ahead becoming more clear, more open. I wasn't alone. Rick's voice, his energy, was still with me. I could feel it. I reached the clearing, and there it was, the truck. But as I grabbed for the door, the world around me seemed to darken again. The roots reached out, the creature growled behind me, and the last whisper of the Watcher echoed in my mind. "You can never escape." And then, I heard Itric's voice, clear and strong. "You have a choice, Warren. You can break free." I was so close. I could feel the truck's door beneath my hand, the cold metal, the lifeline that could carry me out of this nightmare. But the forest had other plans. The roots reached up from the ground again, their cold tendrils wrapping around my legs, pulling me back into the earth. The truck's lights flickered in the distance, but they seemed further away, fading into the oppressive fog as the trees closed in around me. The air was thick, like it was suffocating me. The oppressive presence of the forest closing in from all sides. I could still hear the growl of the creature, growing louder. But it wasn't just the creature, now it was the forest itself. Its hunger, its call. You cannot leave. The voice of the watcher filled my mind again. And this time, it wasn't just a whisper, it was a command. A truth I couldn't escape. The forest had claimed me, and it wouldn't let go. It was too late. The trees around me seemed to twist and writhe, their limbs stretching and reaching, like they were alive, like they were waiting for me to submit, to accept the fate they had already chosen for me. I fought against the roots, my heart pounding in my chest, but I felt the grip of the forest tighten. The air grew colder, suffocating, and the ground beneath my feet seemed to pull at me, dragging me into the earth, pulling me toward the heart of the forest. But as I struggled, I heard it again. Rick's voice. "Warren, fight it. You have to fight." The words were faint, but they cut through the fog like a beacon. Rick's voice wasn't just a memory, it was a spark of defiance, a reminder of what I still had inside me. I had a choice. I could fight this. I could break free. The roots were pulling me down, but I refused to let them. I fought. With everything I had left, I pushed against the ground, pushing myself upward. The more I struggled, the more the forest seemed to fight back, but I didn't stop. I wasn't going to give in, not like this, not without a fight. The creature roared behind me, but I didn't turn. I couldn't. If I turned, it would be over. I had to keep moving, keep running. The truck was still there, its headlights just visible through the fog. I was close. I had to get there. I had to make it. But the ground continued to shake beneath me, and the trees seemed to bend toward me, their gnarled limbs scratching at my skin. The forest was closing in, its roots rising from the earth, its branches reaching for me like claws. But I was so close. The fog swirled around me, but I forced my legs to move, stumbling toward the truck. With one final push, I made it to the door, the truck's light flickering in the distance like a dying star. I pulled the door open with trembling hands, and before I even had time to think, I threw myself inside, slamming it shut behind me. The truck roared to life. The engine growled beneath me, the sound of it almost drowning out the growl of the creature behind me. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. The forest was still out there, but I was free at least for now. I floored the gas pedal, the tires spinning on the gravel, and I took off down the road, my heart still pounding, my hands shaking. The forest was receding behind me, but I knew better than to think it was over. The fog cleared just enough for me to see the road ahead, but it felt like the forest was still following, its presence lingering in the air, like it was watching. Every part of me felt like it was being chased, but when I glanced in the rearview mirror, there was nothing. The road stretched ahead, and the creature's growl was silent, but the weight of the forest's power still hung in the air, like a shadow. It hadn't let me go. Not yet. I kept driving, my foot glued to the gas, my eyes focused on the road ahead. I had made it this far, but I knew that the forest's hunger wasn't something I could outrun. It was a part of me now, something deep within that I couldn't escape, no matter how far I drove. The headlights ahead became the lights of a town in the distance, the first signs of civilization I had seen in what felt like forever. But even as I neared the town, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched, that the forest was still there, waiting. I finally reached the town, my hands still trembling on the wheel, my heart still pounding in my chest. But even as I parked the truck, I knew something was wrong. I wasn't safe. The forest had been a trap, and I had walked straight into it. I had fought, yes, but now I understood the truth. The forest never lets go, and as I sat in the truck, in the safety of the town, I realized that the forest was still with me. I wasn't free. Not yet. The moment I stepped out of the truck, I knew. I could still feel it, the weight of the forest, like a shadow that stretched far beyond the trees. It was waiting for me, breathing, watching. The chill of the night air hit me hard, but it wasn't the cold that made my skin crawl. No, that was the presence. The forest wasn't just a place. It had become something much more sinister, much more powerful. I could feel it creeping into my bones, into my thoughts. I wasn't free. Not yet. Not while it still lingered in the back of my mind. Not while I could feel the roots pulling at me. Always pulling, like I was part of its eternal cycle. I stood outside the truck for a long moment, frozen in place, the engine still running, the headlights dimming in the distance. My hands shook, but it wasn't from the cold. It was from the dread, the suffocating feeling that someone was watching me. Not just watching, but waiting. The small town I had driven into seemed ordinary enough at first. Its lights flickered through the fog that still clung to the streets, casting long, twisted shadows along the pavement. The hum of the occasional streetlight broke the eerie silence, but the town was still too still. It felt as though the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I walked toward the first building I could find, a rundown convenience store with a neon sign buzzing faintly above the door. It felt safe, but the closer I got to it, the more I realized that wasn't true. The town was a shell. It was still within the grasp of the forest, hidden beneath layers of normalcy. The forest was everywhere, its influence, its hunger. I could still hear the wind rustling through the trees, could still feel the pull of that ancient presence. It wasn't a physical thing anymore. It was inside me. I stepped into the store, and the door creaked open, a bell jingling above my head. A few fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting a dull light on the shelves of snacks and bottled drinks. There was an eerie quiet inside, but no one was there. Just the sounds of a refrigerator humming in the corner. A man was behind the counter, hunched over, his face obscured by the dim light. His clothes were old and worn, a faded flannel shirt, dirt under his nails. The second he saw me, his eyes narrowed. "You're from Blackwood, aren't you?" His voice was low, rough, but there was something about the way he spoke that made my blood run cold. He wasn't asking me. He knew. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I just passed through. He leaned forward, his eyes flicking quickly toward the door and back to me, like he was making sure no one was listening. "You won't last long," he muttered, barely above a whisper. "None of you do. You think you can outrun it, but you can't." A chill ran down my spine. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. How did he know? How could he know what I'd been through? The horrors of Blackwood. He pushed himself up, his hands trembling as he wiped them on his shirt. His eyes were wide now, filled with a strange urgency. "You're not the first. You won't be the last." His voice dropped, just above a whisper. "You think you can leave, but it follows." I took a step back, my body tensing. I could feel the heaviness in the air again, that presence, that sensation that the forest was still there, lurking in the shadows. The forest was always there, watching, waiting. I forced myself to speak, trying to steady my voice. "What do you mean? It follows?" He looked at me like I should already know, like the answer was so obvious it didn't need saying. "The forest doesn't let go of its own. You're still marked, even if you leave. It's always with you." My mind raced. He was wrong. I had escaped. I had run. But as I turned toward the door, the feeling of the forest's presence intensified, squeezing my chest like an invisible hand. "You should leave, son." The man's voice was softer now, almost pleading. "You can't stay here. It'll claim you too, just like it claimed me." I stared at him, my mind spinning. He was talking about something far worse than I had realized. It wasn't just the creatures in the woods or the Watcher. It was the forest itself. The forest had been waiting, watching, drawing me in from the moment I set foot in it. I stepped back toward the door, but as I did, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror behind the counter. Something moving. I spun around. but there was nothing there, just the reflection of the empty store. But it was too late. The moment my eyes met the mirror, the air grew heavy again, the sensation of being watched settling back into my bones. I wasn't alone. The forest was still here, still with me. The man at the counter stared at me, his eyes wide in horror. You've seen it, haven't you? It's already inside you. I wanted to argue, to deny it, but my heart was pounding too hard. I felt it. The forest, the creature, the watcher, all of it. It had never left. It had followed me. The door slammed open behind me, and I didn't wait to see who or what was standing there. I didn't care. I bolted, running out of the store and into the street. The town wasn't safe. The world wasn't safe, and I wasn't free. The forest had claimed me. I ran, my breath ragged in my chest, each step carrying me further from the convenience store and deeper into the town. The fog swirled around me, thick and oppressive, as though the town itself was swallowed by it. I could still feel it, the forest, its presence looming just behind me, like a shadow trailing my every move. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, and every rustle in the distance sent my heart into overdrive. It was there. I could feel it in my bones. The man's words echoed in my mind, repeating over and over like a warning. It follows. The forest had never left. It was still with me. It was inside me now. The weight of it, the mark it had placed on me, I was part of it. I stumbled, the adrenaline rushing through me, my mind barely keeping pace with my body as I bolted toward the nearest streetlight. The neon glow above me did nothing to dispel the eerie atmosphere of the town, only serving to cast long, distorted shadows on the pavement. The town looked abandoned, empty, save for the oppressive fog that hung in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that the buildings themselves were just facades, hollow shells hiding the true power of the forest. I turned down another street, but the road felt wrong. The buildings were crooked, their windows dark and lifeless. It was as though the street itself was changing, like the town wasn't just a place, it was a reflection of the forest, warped, twisted, alive with its influence. I pulled at my jacket, trying to steady my breath, but the cold was too much. My body felt like it was on fire, and the pressure in my chest was unbearable. It felt like something was inside me, crawling beneath my skin, moving through my veins. I tried to breathe deeply, but the air felt thick, saturated with something unnatural. And then I heard it, the whispering. It came from all around me, soft at first, barely a murmur, but then it grew louder. The trees, the buildings, the very town seemed to breathe with it, pulsing with the voices of the forest. It wasn't just in the air, it was in my mind, swirling in the depths of my thoughts. The forest was speaking to me. You cannot run. You cannot escape. I stopped in my tracks, my feet heavy as if the ground itself had turned to stone. My head spun, the voices growing clearer, more insistent, until they filled the very air around me. I clutched at my temples, trying to shut them out, but the whispers only grew louder. Warren Whitman. The voice came again, deep, cold, and familiar, and it sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just the forest, it was the Watcher. The figure that had once been a distant presence, an observer in the fog, was now inside me, its influence spreading through my veins like poison. The cycle is complete. You belong to us now. I backed away, my heart racing. It was too much. The weight of the forest's power pressed against my chest, threatening to crush me, to drag me back into the heart of the woods, where I had been marked. It wasn't just the creature chasing me. The forest itself was alive, and it was inescapable. I was part of it now. I spun around, looking for an escape, but the road ahead was swallowed by the fog. The buildings around me seemed to loom closer, their windows like dark, hollow eyes, staring into my soul. The town was part of it. The streets were shifting, the ground beneath me trembling, as if the very fabric of reality was bending to the forest's will. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The forest was everywhere. Come back. It wasn't the Watcher's voice this time. It was Rick. Rick, the soul I had seen twisted by the forest, was now calling to me from the depths of this nightmare. His voice, distorted and hollow, whispered in the fog, pulling me in, making me turn, making me accept it. I staggered backward, shaking my head. No, I couldn't go back. I couldn't. The fog was suffocating, the voices overwhelming. My body felt like it was made of stone, but I couldn't stop myself from walking forward. The forest had claimed me. It was inside me. I felt the ground shift beneath me once more, and suddenly, the town was gone. The streets vanished, the buildings disappeared, and I was standing alone. In the middle of the forest, the fog so thick I couldn't see beyond a few feet. The heart of Blackwood. I wasn't just in the woods anymore. I was standing in the very center of the forest, the place where it all began, where it had all started. The creature stood before me, its form so massive that it swallowed the mist around it. Its glowing eyes locked onto me, its jaws snapping, its body writhing like a shadow of darkness. The Watcher's figure emerged from the fog, standing next to the creature, its eyes glowing in the same eerie light as the tree. I could feel the weight of the Watcher's gaze, like it was watching me inside out, peeling back every layer of my being. You are the offering. The forest's voice reverberated through me, not just in my ears, but in my mind. I was no longer a human being. I was part of it, part of the cycle. But then, something inside me snapped. I wasn't just going to die here. Not like Rick. Not like the others. I still had a choice. The forest hadn't won. Not yet. With everything I had left, I threw myself toward the creature, the Watcher, the heart of the forest. I fought back, grabbing onto the roots that still tried to pull me into the earth. The tree's pulse throbbed beneath me, but I wasn't going to submit. I wasn't going to be a part of it. The air around me was thick with the suffocating presence of the forest, its roots reaching up from the earth as if they were alive, writhing and twisting to pull me back into its embrace. I could feel the weight of the trees pressing down on me, the oppressive power of Blackwood seeping into my skin, my bones, like poison filling my veins. I could hear the growl of the creature, the whispers of the Watcher, and the eerie hum of the tree, all merging into a single, undeniable force. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop fighting. The creature loomed before me, its massive form blocking the path ahead, its glowing eyes locking onto mine with a predatory hunger. It wasn't just hunting me anymore. It was controlling me, guiding me toward the tree, toward the center of Blackwood. It was like the forest itself had become one with the creature, and I was the one caught in the middle, a prize to be claimed. I reached for the rifle at my side, my hands trembling, but as I lifted it, I realized how weak I had become. My limbs felt like lead, my chest tight with panic. The weight of the forest's power had drained me, sapped me of every ounce of strength I had. The Watcher stepped forward, its presence looming like an immovable wall. You can't run, Warren. The forest owns you now. The voice was cold, final. There was no mercy in it, no escape. I turned to face the tree, my eyes falling on the glowing veins in its bark, pulsing with unnatural light, like it was breathing, alive. The roots beneath my feet seemed to curl, wrapping around my legs, and I could feel them pulling me closer, dragging me toward the heart of the forest. I was sinking. I was becoming part of it. It's over, Warren. The cycle is complete. The Watcher's voice filled my mind again, but this time, something in me snapped. I wasn't ready to die. I wasn't ready to become part of this twisted cycle. I couldn't let it win. Not like Rick. Not like the others. My chest tightened as I focused on the tree, the pulsing veins of light, the source of all this power. I had to destroy it. I had to stop the forest from claiming me, from pulling me into its eternal, suffocating darkness. I threw myself forward, my body screaming in protest as the roots tightened around me. The ground seemed to give way beneath my feet, pulling me deeper into the earth, but I fought against it, my hands reaching toward the tree. "No," I shouted, but the forest only responded with a deeper growl. The creature's eyes glowing brighter, the watcher's presence closing in. It wouldn't stop. It wouldn't let me go. But I had to try. I had to survive. I grabbed the trunk of the tree, my fingers digging into the rough bark. But the moment I touched it, I felt the surge of power shoot through me. It wasn't just the tree's power. It was the forest itself, filling every part of me, every fiber of my being. It was inside me, consuming me from the inside out. But then, I heard it, Rick's voice. "You can break free, Warren. Fight. Don't let it consume you." It was faint, distant, but it cut through the fog of the forest's influence like a beacon. Rick was still fighting. He hadn't given in, and neither would I. I took a deep breath, pushing through the pain, through the suffocating pull of the tree's power. With every ounce of will I had left, I yanked myself away from the tree, stumbling back toward the clearing, toward the truck. The creature roared, its massive form blocking my path, but I didn't stop. I ran. I couldn't stop. The fog cleared just enough for me to see the truck ahead, its headlights cutting through the mist like a lifeline. It was my only chance. I reached the truck, the door almost within reach, but then the ground shuddered beneath me. The creature's growl intensified, and I could feel the pressure of the forest's power pulling at me once more. I turned, my heart racing, and saw the watcher step forward, its eyes glowing bright, a cold smile twisting on its lips. "It's too late, Warren. You belong to us." I shook my head, my body refusing to give up. The creature wasn't the worst part of this anymore. The watcher wasn't either. It was the forest. The forest was the true enemy, and it had claimed me. I reached for the truck door, but the roots surged again, wrapping around my legs, pulling me down. The creature lunged forward, its massive claws swiping through the air, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. With everything I had, I threw myself into the truck, slamming the door shut behind me. I didn't wait. I floored the gas pedal, the truck screeching to life as I tore down the road, the creature's growls fading behind me, but the weight of the forest still hanging over me like a dark cloud. As the town's lights grew brighter in the distance, I knew one thing. The forest hadn't let me go. It was still with me. The truck's tires screamed against the gravel as I sped through the narrow streets, the town fading behind me. The engine roared, but the noise felt like a distant echo in my ears, drowned out by the thunderous beating of my heart. I kept my foot pressed down on the gas, the road before me dark and winding, with the trees creeping closer on either side, their shadowy limbs reaching for me. I couldn't outrun it. The forest had never left. It was inside me now, in my blood, my bones. The forest's presence lingered like a storm on the horizon, just beyond my reach, always there, always waiting for the right moment to claim me. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but the thick fog swallowed everything behind me. The trees were no longer visible, just the thick mist that had followed me from Blackwood. It seemed to stretch on endlessly, closing in, as if the forest itself had become a living thing, a vast, hungry entity that would not be satisfied until I had fully given in to its will. The road ahead was still empty, but my grip on the steering wheel tightened. There was nowhere to go. The only way out was to keep driving, to keep running. But no matter how fast I went, the dread weighed on me like a physical force. Every part of me was aching, both physically and mentally. The forest had taken so much from me already, and it wasn't going to let go. I thought of Rick. His voice echoed in my mind, still faint, but present. He had tried to warn me. He had tried to escape too, but the forest had claimed him. And now, I understood. It wasn't just the creature. It wasn't just the watcher. It was the forest itself that had chosen me. The forest had marked me, and no matter how far I ran, no matter how many miles I put between myself and Blackwood, it was still there, inside me. I tried to push the thoughts away, but they kept creeping in, pulling me down. I couldn't escape. Not really. The weight of the forest's mark on my soul was too strong, too pervasive. I could feel its presence, pushing against my thoughts, making it impossible to think clearly. The forest was closing in on me, even here, in the town, even in the truck. It was waiting. I took a sharp turn onto a new road, but the fog ahead thickened, swirling faster, darker, as though it had a life of its own. The truck's headlights barely cut through the mist. I could see the road stretching ahead, but it felt wrong. Like I was driving down the same road I had just left. Like I was driving in circles. I slammed the brakes. The truck screeched to a halt, the tires slipping on the wet road. I gripped the wheel, trying to steady my shaking hands. I wasn't imagining it. The road was changing, warping, just like the forest had done. I could feel it beneath me, the subtle shift in the air, the presence of something watching, waiting. The forest was here, even if I couldn't see it. The engine sputtered again. The lights flickered, the radio crackling with static. I turned the key, but nothing happened. The truck was dead. I opened the door and stepped outside, my legs shaky beneath me. The fog had thickened, and I could barely see my hand in front of my face. The air was heavy with something foul, the smell of decay and damp earth. Like the forest had already begun to consume the land around me. I tried to shake it off, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave. I turned toward the trees just ahead. They were too still, too quiet, but they weren't normal trees. They were twisted, their branches bent and warped, reaching out like claws. The forest wasn't just alive, it was aware of me, and it was moving, shifting, adapting to my presence. I had never felt so vulnerable. The growl came again, but this time, it wasn't just from behind me. It came from all around, from the trees, from the earth itself. The forest was closing in. I turned back to the truck, but the door slammed shut behind me with a deafening crash, as if the truck itself had become part of the forest. I tried to open it again, but it was locked. I yanked at the handle, panic flooding through me. Warren. The voice was close, faint, but real. I spun around, but there was nothing. Warren, help me. I froze. It was Rick's voice, but it was distorted, twisted, as if it was coming from deep inside the forest, from beneath the ground, from within me. The ground beneath my feet shifted, and I stumbled backward. I couldn't breathe. The pull of the forest was growing stronger, and I was too weak to fight it. The roots, the trees, the creature, they were all connected, and I was part of it now. The growl grew louder, the presence of the creature closing in, and I could feel it in my chest, in my mind. It wasn't just after me. It had already won. But then, something changed. A distant light broke through the fog. It wasn't the glow of the truck's headlights, but something else. A flicker of light from the distance, through the dense mist. It was faint, but it was there. I didn't know what it was, but something in me told me to run. I ran, my legs carrying me faster than I thought possible, my breath coming in ragged gasps, the weight of the forest pushing down on me with every step. I could feel it, feel the forest fighting me every step of the way, but I didn't stop. The light was getting closer now. I reached it, but when I looked around, there was nothing, just an empty stretch of road. And then, I heard it. A crack, followed by the unmistakable sound of roots breaking through the ground. The forest was following. The light flickered once more, and I stood in the middle of the road, disoriented, breathless, and surrounded by the forest that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The dense fog that had once seemed a distant threat was now an omnipresent force, suffocating the air. I couldn't see clearly, Couldn't hear anything but the wild rush of my heartbeat in my ears. I turned slowly, knowing that something was behind me, just out of sight. I felt the weight of the forest closing in around me, the silence pressing against my chest. It wasn't just the trees I feared, now it was the life that pulsed within them, the unholy, ancient consciousness that controlled everything in Blackwood. I tried to move, but the ground beneath me shifted. I staggered backward, and the roots beneath me snapped up like grasping fingers, pulling at my legs. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the dense air, absorbed by the forest's deep hunger. The forest didn't just claim you, it transformed you. The dark shape of the creature loomed closer, its eyes glowing yellow through the fog, reflecting the dim light that seemed to come from nowhere. But I wasn't afraid of the creature anymore. Not really. I had come to realize that it wasn't the beast that was the most dangerous, it was the forest itself. The creature was just an extension of it. A weapon. A servant. I tried to move, tried to break free of the roots wrapping around my legs, but the more I struggled, the deeper I sank into the ground, into the soul of the forest. The feeling was suffocating. It was like the very earth was alive, hungry, pressing in on me. I could feel it inside me, its power swelling, taking root in my bones. I wasn't human anymore. The figure of Rick appeared in the fog, his body moving like a shadow among the trees. His features were distorted, twisted by the power of Blackwood, but I knew it was him. I had known it before. Rick was part of it. The Watcher's hold had consumed him just like it had consumed everyone else. He had become one with the forest, a living embodiment of its darkness. You can't run, Warren. I looked at him, the twisted version of the man I had once known, and for the first time, I saw the truth in his eyes' resignation. The forest had done this to him, and now it was doing it to me. There's no escape. I shook my head, desperate, trying to break free of the roots that had coiled around me. I had to escape, but the pull of the forest was too strong. The more I resisted, the more the roots dug into my skin, the more the forest drained me. It wasn't just physical, it was in my mind. I could feel its presence weaving its way into my thoughts, the whispers growing louder, urging me to give in, to accept what was happening to me. You're part of us now. The trees seemed to shift, their gnarled branches stretching out toward me, as if they were reaching for something deep inside me, pulling me into their roots. I could feel that Ty was becoming part of the forest. The Watcher, Rick, the creatures, the trees, they were all one. I was being absorbed into it, becoming part of its endless hunger. The heartbeat of the forest grew louder, pounding in my chest, mixing with my own pulse. It was taking me. It was taking everything I had ever been. I stumbled backward, my legs shaking, the fog thickening around me. The road ahead seemed to stretch on forever, but no matter how far I walked, it felt like I was only getting deeper into the forest's grip. The trees towered around me like silent sentinels, watching my every move. The creature's growl echoed behind me again, closer this time, and I spun, aiming my rifle into the fog. But the forest had already taken my will. The gun felt heavy in my hands, a weight I couldn't bear. I couldn't fight anymore. And then I saw it, the tree. The massive, gnarled trunk stood at the center of the clearing, its glowing veins pulsing with an unnatural light. The tree was the heart of the forest, the source of its power. The roots spread out from it, intertwining with everything around me, and I realized then that I had been walking toward it all along. I had been chosen, drawn to it by the very will of Blackwood. The tree was alive, more alive than anything I had ever known, and it was calling me, pulling me toward it. Come to us, Warren. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to block out the words, trying to hold on to whatever humanity I had left. But the tree's pull was undeniable. It had claimed me. It had claimed all of us. I could feel it again, the growing presence inside me, taking root deeper with each passing moment. The forest was taking over. It had already buried its roots in my mind, in my soul. The creature growled one final time, but it was no longer necessary. The forest had claimed me. I wasn't running anymore. The forest was no longer just the trees, the shadows, the creatures lurking in the mist. It had become everything. It was in the very soil beneath my feet, in the air I breathed, in my blood, in my thoughts. There was no place in Blackwood that was free of its reach. It had swallowed me whole. I was now a part of it, just as Rick had been, just as every soul the forest had claimed before me. I stood there in the clearing, the heart of the forest, my body trembling with a fear too deep for words. The roots of the tree seemed to pulse beneath the ground, reaching for me like the fingers of a sleeping giant, just waiting for the right moment to drag me under. The creature's growl was distant now, but I could still feel it. I could feel everything. It was watching me. The Watcher's form emerged from the fog again, its eyes glowing like twin lanterns in the mist. It didn't move, but its presence loomed larger than life. It was no longer a mere figure. It had become part of the forest itself, an extension of the ancient will that controlled everything in Blackwood. You are the offering. The words hit me like a physical blow, shaking me to my core. The forest demanded it, and I was the one who had been chosen. There was no escape, no way to fight back. The forest had been waiting for me, waiting for someone who was foolish enough to wander too far, too deep. I wanted to scream, to rage against it, but the power of the forest silenced me. I could feel the weight of it pressing against me, the pull of its dark embrace tugging at my very soul. The forest didn't need to speak with words anymore. I knew. It didn't just want me, it needed me. The tree's glowing veins pulsed in time with the beat of my heart, the energy in the air growing stronger, suffocating. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. Every part of me screamed to break free, but the forest wouldn't let me. It had already taken root inside me, deep in my core, and there was nothing left to fight with. You will become part of the forest, Warren. You are its now. The Watcher's voice echoed through my mind, a truth I couldn't deny. It was the same voice I had heard so many times before, a command from the very heart of Blackwood. The forest wasn't just alive, it was conscious, aware of me, aware of everything that had ever stepped into its domain. It had claimed me, just as it had claimed every soul before me. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to shut out the forest's power, trying to find a way to resist, but I felt it, the roots burrowing into my skin, wrapping around my limbs like chains. The tree's power surged through me, and I could feel my body changing. It wasn't just the forest's strength, it was the essence of it. The very darkness that had fed on countless souls, including my own. I wasn't fighting anymore. The forest had already won. But just as the weight of the tree's power began to consume me completely, a sudden flash of light broke through the fog, like a beacon cutting through the darkness. I opened my eyes, squinting against the blinding light, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw Ittrick standing in the distance, his form barely visible through the mist. His face was different, now twisted, hollow, but still him. He was part of the forest, but somehow, his voice still reached me. Warren, don't give up. His voice echoed in my mind, faint, like a distant memory, but it was enough to ignite something inside me, a spark. I pushed against the roots that held me, forcing my legs to move, forcing my body to act. The power of the tree surged through me, but I fought back, pushing against the crushing weight of the forest with every ounce of strength I had left. The Watcher didn't move, but I could feel its gaze on me, cold and unyielding. The creature in the distance growled again, but it was quieter now. Its hunger had been fed, its purpose fulfilled. The forest's will was focused on me. I was the one that needed to be claimed, but not yet. I twisted, my body fighting the force that gripped it, and for a brief, fleeting moment, I saw something, the road. It was just beyond the edge of the clearing, hidden behind the trees, but it was there. It was my way out. With everything I had left, I pulled myself free from the roots. The forest screaming in protest, its energy thrumming through me. I couldn't stay. I couldn't let the forest win. I staggered toward the road, toward the distant light. Every step felt like wading through mud, my limbs heavy with the forest's power. But I kept moving. I kept fighting. And then, I felt it, the final grip of the forest tightening. The Watcher's voice echoed once more. You cannot escape. But I didn't stop. I reached the edge of the clearing, and just before the tree could claim me fully, I felt the light break through. The road. Freedom. I reached for the door, my fingers trembling, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I jumped into the truck, slamming the door shut behind me. The engine roared to life, and with one last burst of strength, I slammed the truck into gear, my foot pushing the pedal to the metal. The forest roared behind me, but I didn't turn. I didn't have to. The road ahead was clear. For now.